Good evening. This is Red Panther transmitting from my sacred temple of Eris in San Francisco, California. Tonight, I'll be reading Borrowing Trouble by Elizabeth H. Boyer. You are the sorriest excuse for an apprentice I've ever encountered, roared the Maestari, blinking through the soot floating around him. Imbecile, you nearly incinerated us all. I swear I can't tolerate another 89 years of your presence in my school. The next traveling tradesman I see, I'm going to sell your articles of apprenticeship to him and be rid of you, Agnar Henstromson. Agnar sneezed and commenced writing the blackened crucibles, spilling more of the materials inside as he did so. The brazier was still smoking and stinking, and sinister little orange flames lapped out hungrily for another taste of the Maestari's cloak. I can't fathom what went wrong, Agnar said anxiously. Perhaps a word in the wrong place, or it's possible those troll bones were still a bit damp. It's nothing so small as a mistake, the wizard snorted, and the rest of the apprentices all sniggered smugly and exchanged winks and nudges and grins. It's general incompetence. It's a total lack of aptitude for magic. I'm sick of being blown up and set on fire. I'll never make a wizard out of you, Agnar. I rue the day I ever set eyes on you at that hiring fair. Your clan chieftain must have been ecstatic to get rid of you, and at an exorbitant price at that. I never expected to be cheated by the Galder clan. Agnar drew himself up indignantly at this insult to the clan known for producing the most and best wizards in the Alfar realm. You weren't cheated, he declared, pushing back the shreds of his charred hood. I was born to be a wizard, and I'm going to be one. Let me try this experiment one more time. The third time is always lucky for me. By the remnants of my beard, no, bellowed Bjarnader, his eyes bulging with rage. You've had all the chances you're going to get. You're a failure. Get out. I don't want to lay my eyes upon you again. I wash my hands of you. Agnar measured the distance to the door in a quick glance and haughtily glared back at Bjarnader. Very well, but I think you're giving up much too soon, he declared. One of these days you'll be sorry when I'm a better wizard than you. I intend to join the Fire Wizards Guild and fight the Dokalfur, rather than teach a lot of boring, useless nonsense to a bunch of thick-headed, snotty-nosed little apprentices. He almost made it through the door before a sizzling dart of flame caught up with him, setting his breeches ablaze. Bjarnader bellowed something after him, but he was halfway to the horse trough to extinguish his trousers and didn't catch all of it. But he supposed it was more words to the effect that his presence was no longer desired in Bjarnader's magic school, and what ill effects his return might have upon his person. Agnar sighed and heaved himself out of the horse trough. Sacked again, and he'd have to sew up the burn holes in his pants. Sacking Agnar was getting to be a regular ritual with Bjarnader, one which the other apprentices enjoyed immensely, especially the younger ones. Spoiled brats, all of them, bestowed with gifts and talents they had not earned or deserved, while he, Agnar, had to struggle so desperately to control the smallest fire-raising spell. Worse yet, a closer inspection revealed that his breeches weren't going to tolerate another scorching from Bjarnader. There was nothing left to repair, so the only alternative was to visit the laundry-drying lawn and steal a pair from one of the other apprentices. Already the bright side of the situation was occurring to Agnar as he pulled on his stolen pants and contemplated his situation. Here he was, liberated in the middle of the day, out in the sunshine, while the other 7 scholars were grinding off their noses over tedious spells and smelly experiments. Another glorious holiday lay before him, while Bjarnader's temper cooled. Usually it took only a day or two until the Maestari had regained his composure and was in humor to try again. After all, Agnar was the son of the clan Galder, the wizard's clan. Somewhere in that unprepossessing and inept lump of potential, there was a magnificent talent waiting to be discovered and taught. In the meantime, Agnar would make himself scarce, lying low until he could waylay an apprentice and inquire into the condition of Bjarnader's temper. It did give him a bit of uneasiness to note that with each sacking, Bjarnader's temper seemed to take longer to recover. Next time, he told himself sternly, he would try harder to do exactly what the Maestari told him, no matter how ridiculous and elementary it seemed, instead of trying to find shortcuts. Shortcuts were his downfall in every case. He would begin to work a spell, with the appropriate words, gestures, and magical apparatus, but all of a sudden a brilliant idea would pop into his head. Sometimes it was a seemingly ingenious shortcut. Sometimes it was a hilarious practical joke obtained by twisting the words of the spell just slightly. Given his Galder heritage and great latent talent, he had no choice except to give in to inspiration. Once or twice the results had indeed been spectacular successes, and he had conjured wonderful elemental creatures of wind, fire, earth, water, or he worked some witty, shape-shifting spell upon one of his fellow apprentices that made everyone laugh. Unfortunately, the failures had outnumbered the successes far too many times, and they were, of course, in the manner of all failures, absolutely dazzling in their awfulness, thereby eclipsing any good Agnar had ever done in his entire lifetime, and thus raising Bjarnarder's doubts about Agnar's future as a wizard. In these times of duress, Agnar departed Bjarnarder's moss-covered ruined fortress which housed the magic school, and took up temporary abode at Finn's Inn, some 5 miles on the other side of Geltafell. Old Finn was always glad of more help, and set him to work at scything hay, or digging potatoes, or putting up endlessly fallen stone fences, or any one of the innumerable chores essential for the husbandry of creatures as troublesome and stupid as sheep. Young Finn, however, hoisted one black eyebrow and grunted, "Sacked again? That's the 5th time, isn't it?" "I haven't been keeping count," muttered Agnar, pretending to be in a great hurry to go pick ticks off the sheep. "You'd better buckle down, lad, or you'll be picking ticks off sheep's bellies for the rest of your life," went on young Finn with an admonitory gleam in his eye. "And that would be a great waste now, wouldn't it?" It was enough to make Agnar think he might have to find some other place to lie up while Bjarnarder was in one of his foul humors. Toward evening, during the long hours of northern twilight, when the trolls were roaring and grunting in the rough heights of Geltafell, a cart came rolling into the inn-yard, drawn by a monstrous, shaggy black ox with wicked, curling horns. Agnar went out reluctantly to stable the beast, while the 2 Finns rather warily made the traveler welcome. He was tall and lean, and well cloaked and hooded about, but in spite of his secretive manner, Agnar sensed magical powers emanating from the stranger. Perhaps the stranger sensed something about Agnar also. He glanced at him sharply and said, "Mind your step around that ox, or he'll hook you a good one. He kicks like a demon, too." The stranger availed himself of the plentiful food and drink offered by Finn's wife, warmed himself briefly near the fire, then announced that he preferred to sleep in his wagon, which was enclosed against the weather and perfectly comfortable. Agnar felt powerfully compelled to follow him outdoors, on the pretext of seeing if the stable was securely locked up for the night. When he was well away from the house, the stranger stopped and waited for Agnar to approach him. "Well, what is it you wish?" the stranger asked. "You're simply burning for something, aren't you? Is it a necromancer's ring you want, to put under the tongue of a corpse so it will tell you the future? Rune sticks with almost every spell you can imagine on them for summoning storms, trolls, giants, or for finding treasure? Secret names of all elements and beasts of the earth, cloaks of invisibility, swords of power, belts of strength, boots that will take you anywhere in a stride. A veritable enchanted wardrobe awaits you in my wagon, and the filters, potions, distillations, extracts, and liquors." Agnar was shaking his head as the list went on, until the stranger broke off sharply. "What's the matter? You haven't got any money to pay? Well, good night, then." No, that's not it," Agnar protested swiftly. "It's just that I don't have the knowledge to use all those things yet. I'm only an apprentice, and not exactly the Maestari Bjarnarder's favorite, either." "Oh, you're not any good, is that it? And you think I might have something in my wagon to help you?" The stranger rubbed his narrow chin, his eyes making 2 shining points in the dark. "Perhaps there is. Follow me, and we'll see if we can come to terms." The inside of the wagon reminded Agnar of Bjarnarder's forbidden storeroom, which he had only stolen fascinated glimpses into a few times. Shelves lined the sides of the wagon, laden with alluring little boxes, all carefully sealed with blobs of colored wax and strings, dark, tightly stoppered bottles, jars labeled in runic, embroidered bags and pouches, bundles of herbs, dried lizards, snakes, bats, and cages with live creatures peering through the bars with bright, suspicious eyes. The only ordinary thing here was a great orange and white cat bulging over the sides of a basket, sleeping curled half inside out, with one white paw clamped over his face. The smells alone made Agnar's head feel like a cork bobbing lightly on the water. He inhaled rapturously, feeling recognition and wonder burning within him, knowing he was truly in the world where he belonged. It should be something small and unobtrusive, the stranger mused aloud, his gaze running over his inventory. I'm thinking that what you need is a familiar. He raised one unsavory, withered finger to underscore the word. Of course, that's it exactly. It would know all the spells, and it would help me do them, and the Maestari would never know the difference. A rat would be ideal. I could keep him in my pocket. Agnar peered into a cage where a large black rat bared his teeth at him and took a savage nip at his fingers. No, old Rada's not for you. You're too inexperienced. A familiar can take you over if you're not careful, and you'll be the servant. Let's see now, how about this little cricket? I think you could control him. Agnar's expectations of a familiar were not fulfilled by the cricket, or the mouse, or the finch, or the lizard the stranger showed him, although he did hesitate over the lizard. Haven't you got something bigger? He asked. All these things are too cute. You can't control something bigger, the stranger said. You're very much a novice at magic, and you might end up with a master far worse than old Bjarnadur. Agnar was gazing at the cat as he spoke, and one large green eye popped open suddenly, focusing on him with increasing interest. The cat unrolled himself, stood up suddenly on his toes, and yawned ferociously, baring his yellowed fangs in a tortured grimace. Then he sat down heavily and squinted sleepily at Agnar. Fanning out his whiskers, he started a rumbling purr, kneading his big white paws enticingly. Agnar reached out and scratched the cat's wide skull, ridged with the scars of many fights, and the purring doubled in volume. Oh no, don't you even think about old Scuggy, the stranger said before Agnar could speak. He's too much for you, too much for almost anyone. He only tolerates me because I feed him well and let him do exactly what he pleases. Scuggy? He doesn't fit his name. He's no shadow, Agnar said. He's the size of 2 cats in one skin. Don't insult him. He hears and understands every word you say, and he holds a grudge forever. Now forget about him. He can get very rude and nasty, can't you, Scuggy? Scuggy smiled and rubbed his jowls on Agnar's arm, still purring like mountain thunder. When Agnar turned away reluctantly, Scuggy leaped down from his basket with a solid thud and followed him, rubbing himself on Agnar's ankles at every step. When Agnar sat down, Scuggy jumped into his lap and settled down possessively, digging in his claws gently whenever Agnar stirred. His lazy green eyes fairly beamed with benevolence. I think he likes me, Agnar said. Why can't I have him? He won't do anything to me, I'm sure of it. I refuse to be responsible for what might happen. I'd lose the good faith of all wizards I sell to. I simply can't allow you to take him. He reached out to lift Scuggy off Agnar's knees, but Scuggy flattened his ears and uttered a deadly growl, followed by a hiss that sputtered with menace. His weight seemed to increase, augmented by his sheer determination not to be picked up. Agnar smoothed down Scuggy's fur, which was half bristling, and Scuggy resumed his tuneful purring, keeping a wary eye turned upon the stranger. I'm going to take him. How much do you want for him? The stranger sighed dismally and pressed his fingers to his temples. I can't accept money for Scuggy without grave retributions befalling me. Does that give you an idea of his value? Take him if you dare, but one day perhaps I'll demand a favor of you, if you happen to live that long. All I ask for payment right now is a small surety, nothing but a lock of your hair to seal our transaction. That was easily and swiftly done, and Agnar could hardly contain his impatience to get back to Bjarnardarshol to show off his prize. In the morning, and done with his assigned chores on time for breakfast for a change, he strolled into the city great hall which served as dining room, lecture hall, and sleeping quarters for the apprentices. Scuggy paced at his heels, waving his tail and sniffing the food smells approvingly. The other apprentices left off their empty-headed chattering and stared as Agnar took his place at the table. Scuggy sat down expectantly on the table next to him. No one said a word when Agnar appropriated Frifa's sausages and oatmeal for Scuggy. Ho, Agnar, Frifa greeted him warily. As the apprentice next upward from Agnar in status, Frifa always viewed Agnar as his most threatening rival. What are you doing with that cat? Having breakfast, you dolt, Agnar answered. That's unusual in itself, and therefore suspect, Frifa said. Is this another of your hideously bungled attempts at working some spell, or just another absurd practical joke? Agnar heaved an impatient sigh.